Hey everybody, welcome to Pick Osborne's Brain. We got a great lineup for you today. Before we jump into the show, don't forget to take advantage. We're doing a no grain, no pain challenge contest. If you're not familiar with that, go back and watch Tuesday's show. We put a link up for Tuesday's show for you. But we're doing our challenge. So any of you this week that go to Gluten-Free Society, if you're using any of our supplements, any order over 100, we're going to send you a free copy of No Grain, No Pain. So if you want to take advantage of that coupon code is No Pain, N-O-P-A-I-N. And again, free copy of my best-selling book published in 5 different languages internationally, No Grain, No Pain. So let's dive into your questions. If you have nutritional-related questions, specifically if you've got No Grain, No Pain questions, go ahead and fire those into the feed now, and I'll do my best to get those answered within the constraints of our time today. Okay, we got one from Wiley Cat. She says, Dr. Esselstein said that oatmeal is the best food to reduce cholesterol. He eats it at least twice a day with lots of berries. So what's the deal with hearing two different concepts? I eat lots of oatmeal. I'm kind of surprised to hear you say that, Wiley Cat, because I see your name a lot in the feed, and if you've been following me for any length of time, no grain, no pain. It's no grain, no pain. Oatmeal really that simple. Oatmeal is a type of gluten called avidin. So if you are gluten sensitive, and you're eating oatmeal on the regular, there's a potential for a lot of persistent chronic inflammation that can. Now, if you're talking about lowering cholesterol, I would encourage you to go back and watch my crash on cholesterol. As far as cholesterol is concerned, most doctors overconflate cholesterol as a health issue. As a health issue, cholesterol elevation is not a problem, but I would encourage you to go back and watch that show. Really, if you're eating oatmeal several times a day, causing inflammation through lower cholesterol, which really isn't all that important, and what you're really doing is you're eating a highly inflammatory food to theoretically reduce your risk of heart disease based on a theory that elevations in cholesterol could cause that heart disease. And to me, that's why there's two different stories. There's two different narratives, and the cholesterol narrative, in my opinion, is dead. And any of you that are basing your major life choices to take medicines or to eat based on the cholesterol paradigm really need to reevaluate that paradigm altogether. How long does detoxification take? It depends. Everyone's different. Detoxification depends on how you live your life as a general rule in the first place. So there's not like, okay, all detoxes should take 6 weeks or 10 weeks or 12 weeks, because, you know, part of detox is not retoxing. And many of the folks that try to do detoxes are still doing things that create toxicities in their life. So remember, fundamentally, your air needs to be clean, your water needs to be clean, your food needs to be clean and organic. Your lifestyle needs to be clean, you know, and if it's not, detoxification is never going to end. You're going to have an ongoing, forever detoxification process that's just not super effective. Wife is making me warrior bread with blueberries and pecans tomorrow. Love to hear that. That sounds actually pretty good. Maybe you can get our address and mail me some. That way we can taste it here. Any diet advice for a person with autoimmune Addison's? First place to start, Gina, is no grain, no pain. It's the best protocol in terms of diet for any form of autoimmune disease. So if you've got an autoimmune condition and you're looking for, okay, what's the best place to start in terms of, you know, diet and lifestyle? The best place to start is no grain, no pain. How to reverse cholecystitis. I'm going to sound like a broken record. If you're not grain-free, that's step one. Cholecystitis, or inflammation of the gallbladder, can be caused by a number of different things, but diet is probably the predominant reason why it happens. So you got to really get your diet cleaned up first. If your diet's not clean, start there. And if your diet is clean, you know, there are a number of other things that can be done to support the gallbladder. But vitamin C and taurine are necessary nutrients to support healthy gallbladder function. Probiotics can be super helpful in that regard, depending on whether or not you have any other kind of liver dysfunction or liver, preactive or proactive liver disease or underlying liver disease. You might also consider things like milk thistle, TUDCA, and using bile acids as support. My friend started menopause last year. Now she has all kinds of problems, pain in her joints and legs. Does that make sense? And what kind of test would she do to figure out what's going on? Well, menopause is not typically the reason people develop pain in their joints and legs. Now, if she shifted into menopause and her hormone levels dropped and she was already relatively unhealthy, certainly it can exacerbate those types of things. But in and of itself, a woman going through the hormonal change of menopause is not the reason to develop joint pain and leg issues. What dosage of B1 for incontinence? A good place to start, Danielle, for vitamin B1 would be 150 milligrams. It's a relatively safe amount, and that's, I would use, if you're talking about B1, I would use something called benfotiamine, which is a fat-soluble version of vitamin B1, and go up as much as 300 milligrams pretty safely. I mean, those amounts have been studied, and they're pretty safe. If you want to go up any higher than that, I really would encourage you to work with an expert. But you can start with that. Now, some people find, too, that taking magnesium concomitantly with vitamin B1 helps it work better. And some people find that if they're taking high doses of B1 and not taking magnesium, it doesn't work as well. So you might also consider using magnesium in that equation. Let's see here. Question on air filter. There's an air filter company that has aluminum and potassium permanganate in its filter, which a few viewers or reviewers have said have bothered their breathing. Do you recommend those ingredients? I recommend from an air filter, I recommend something that can pull down to 0.3 microns in size that doesn't exacerbate you. And that's different for different people. But there are a lot of good air companies and air filter companies that are out there. One of my favorite brands is the Air Doctor. There's also Austin Air. There's IQ Air. There's Lennox Pure Air Systems. So, I mean, there's just a lot of really good systems that can do the job. But, it's also an individual case-by-case basis for a lot of folks. How can no grain diet help type 1 diabetes? Have you near your doc? We have a case study that we published years ago, Mel. You know the one I'm talking about? Young man with type 1 diabetes. He actually did the no grain, no pain diet with me, and he, for a time, got off of his insulin. And for a type 1 diabetic, this is unheard of. Now, I think he eventually had to get back on insulin. He was originally able to get off of it and sustain that for quite a while, but then he had to actually get back on it, but at much lower doses. And symptomatically, he was greatly improved. So we can put a link up to his story, Gil, and you can check that out. And hopefully that gives you some motivation, right, to make some diet change. I've seen a number of cases of folks with type 1 diabetes, though, that do tremendously well on the no grain, no pain diet. And what do we see? We generally see their blood sugars are much better controlled, and they need a lot less insulin. It's not something that we would expect to see somebody's type 1 diabetes reverse as far as autoimmune conditions go. Type 1 diabetes is not something we would expect to see reverse, unlike many other autoimmune conditions where you can see reversal. I've seen reversal in a number of cases of autoimmune rheumatoid arthritis and psoriatic arthritis and ankylosing spondylitis and scleroderma and dermatomyositis, etc. So, but type 1 diabetes, not so much. Let's see, I smoked 2.5 to 3 packs of cigarettes for 30 years, need an inhaler. Aside from weight loss, what supplements will help with this? Will help with you getting off of cigarettes? I'm not sure I understand the question, Grace. It's never too late. So the final part of that question is it too late for me? Look, you could smoke for 30 years. It's still not too late to improve your health. If you're trying to reverse the damage of 30 years of smoking, you're not going to do that in a week. You're not going to do that in a 30-day diet program like No Grain, No Pain. But you know, the journey of the next 30 years of your life starts with the next 30 days. If you want to get healthy, start behaving like you want to get healthy, start changing your diet. As far as supplements are concerned, there's a huge variety of different supplements that you can use to support yourself. But you know, generally, I'd say start with the no grain, no pain diet change and look into our Gluten-Free Essentials bundle. It contains really the top 4 supplements that I encourage anyone to take if they're new to this. And so it's not a lot of fluff. It's just good, solid support as you're making that diet and lifestyle change. I've done a urine test and have high levels of tungsten. What would that, where would I be getting exposure from tungsten? Check your water. You might have ground contamination of your water. You know, ask yourself, if you're using municipal city water, you might get a hold of your municipality and ask them for their water testing reports. But that's where I would start, Reagan. Let's see here. Pamela from South Carolina. Can you take too much selenium? Yeah, you can. And we actually, one of the interesting things about selenium toxicity in humans, it's not really, we haven't really seen a ton of toxicity, but it's interesting that horses, you know, there's some animal research that shows that hooved animals will actually, their hooves will start to split and peel, and they'll start to lose them when they get too much selenium. And they're, you know, one of the reasons we found that out was there was some volcanic eruption that deposited a lot of selenium in the soil where these animals were grazing, and this is one of the side effects. But you can take too much, and I would say, generally speaking, if you're doing supplemental selenium, probably a good idea to keep it under 400 micrograms a day if you're not being monitored. So hopefully that's helpful for you. When will your products be available in Australia? You know, we're doing our best to try to find a solution for that. The biggest problem is customs, Maddie. So, you know, Australia has their own rules, regulations, and laws, and I don't get to control what they do. So that's been our biggest hang-up. Debbie says, get on Rumble, please. Put our link up to Rumble for Debbie. We're on Rumble, Debbie, so you can check us out over there as well. What if you drank a cup of tea before starting a vitamin C flush? That's fine, Linda. What you don't want to do before vitamin C flush is eat solid food, because that flush is just going to clean out your bowel, and anything you just ate is just going to be pushed right out of you. But if you had a liquid like tea, that wouldn't be a problem. I've been diagnosed with Hashimoto's, have developed heart palpitation since the diagnosis. Are these related? My doctors are not helping much. What can I do? You know, if you've got Hashimoto's as a diagnosis, Brent, and I'm making a big assumption here, I don't know if it's true or not, but what happens when people get a diagnosis typically of Hashimoto's is that their doctor puts them on thyroid medication. And so one of the most common side effects of your thyroid medication being too high is heart palpitations. So if you're new to the diagnosis and you've recently started medication and your heart's starting to palpitate and you've got more anxiety and you're having trouble sleeping at night, and you even feel like maybe you're burning a little bit hotter, having hot flashes, your legs are jumpy or restless, you have a little bit more agitation, these are all symptoms of your thyroid medicine being too high. Look, ask your doctor to measure your TSH. If your TSH is below 0.5, then you're probably being over-medicated, but that, again, you need to have that conversation with your doctor. In recent blood tests, my interferon gamma was high. What do you think I should do? You need to find out why it was high, Dennis. Interferon gamma is a marker of inflammation. Systemically, you're inflamed. So there are different reasons people develop inflammation. There's 4 primary categorical reasons why you might have inflammation: the wrong food, the wrong chemical exposures, you have some type of microbial imbalance or infection, and then number 4, you're nutritionally depleted. And so things like vitamin D deficiency, for example, or vitamin C deficiency can elevate interferon gamma. So have those 4 things checked and figured out, and that way you can make meaningful changes. But suppressing the inflammation with anti-inflammatories or medicines won't resolve why the inflammation exists.
So hold it there for a second. You got. Okay.
Okay, so we're back. Sorry if we froze on you there for a minute. So this next question, Janet's asking, what are my thoughts about einkorn wheat? Einkorn wheat has gluten in it. So if you're gluten sensitive and you're trying to maintain a gluten-free diet, don't eat einkorn wheat. You know, einkorn is one of what they call the ancient grains. And so, you know, if we could argue that, you know, these ancient grains are better than these hybridized versions. But if you are gluten sensitive, it doesn't matter what ancient grain we're talking about, whether it's emmer or einkorn or kamut. These grains are not good for you and you shouldn't eat them because they have gluten in them. So the differentiation is that. Now, so Janet, if you don't know whether or not you're gluten sensitive, you might, if you're struggling with autoimmunity, you absolutely should be tested. You should consider getting tested. The best way to do that is genetic HLA-DQ genotyping, which you can do. You can ask your doctor for, and if your doctor won't do it, you can do that through Gluten-Free Society as well. I've been really hungry lately and have gained weight. Any ideas to control appetite? Really appreciate all your knowledge and kindness. Okay, so if you're hungry and your appetite's out of control, one of the best things you can take to really a few different things. So we're talking about excessive craving, especially if it's carbohydrate. One of the best things to do to help with that is chromium. So taking chromium. We have something called ultra chromium you can use, Victoria. You might also consider extra magnesium. Magnesium deficiency will cause carbohydrate cravings specifically. And you might also consider B vitamins. So those 3 things, chromium, B vitamins, and magnesium, would be supplements you might take that could give you some improvement in that excessive hunger. Now, you also might consider getting yourself tested for micronutrient deficiencies, because a lot of times when people have hunger issues and they don't know why and there's no discernible change in diet, it's because you're hungry for something and your body is sending you hunger messages, or you're not hitting satiety because your body needs a nutrient that you're not getting enough of. So getting micronutrient tested can help you understand potentially what specifically you need to take in order to overcome those hunger cravings. Let's see, on that note, let's see. So Emmy is asking about nutritional testing. I'm getting ready to be at the point where I really want to stop guessing and fine-tune everything. Is this an all-inclusive test that you offer that I can have drawn? Yeah, yes, it is. It's actually if you go to Gluten-Free Society, maybe we can put a link up for me. And it's an all-inclusive test that you get it drawn. It's a simple vial of blood. We will measure and analyze intracellularly 55 different nutrient deficiencies. So all the B vitamins, all the fat-soluble vitamins, as well as omega-3, your minerals and your amino acids are all being tested. So it is the most comprehensive test you can do to assess your nutritional status in the world. So yes, we offer that at Gluten-Free Society. Had my eye pressure measured again, which is now even higher. Doctor gave me drops. Is there another way to do something about this? You need to figure out why your pressures are going up. Usually eye pressures are going up because there's some type of increased inflammation. You know, without knowing what kind of formal diagnosis your doctors have given you, whether there's neural inflammation in your optic nerve or whether you have you know, something else going on systemically driving that up, or whether you have blood pressure problems, hard to say. You know, again, if you're not already no grain, no pain, that's a great place to start. The other thing I see a lot of times, if you are following no grain, no pain, and your diet's dialed in, and your sleep and exercise and sunshine and all the fundamentals are dialed in, where we see a lot of people struggle with persistent eye issues is because they have an environmental mold issue that they're living in. So you might also consider that. I quit sugar 4 days ago. I stink now, wasn't expecting that, and I'm so dizzy, blurry vision. Yeah, you're having withdrawals, Polly. and you're stinking because your body can finally do some detoxification, and so you're probably emitting some of the chemical exposures that sugar was overwhelming your detoxification systems and not allowing you to do it initially. That can go away. Now, if it persists beyond, a couple of weeks, you might want to have a visit with your doctor, but it's not uncommon to see people quit sugar, go through severe withdrawal side effects. Sugar is probably one of the most addictive substances known to man, and I would also suspect, Polly, that you might have a yeast issue. We're doing a crash course on yeast as a driver of illness here in the next few weeks that you might want to pay attention to, but yeast overgrowth could also be what's driving some of those symptoms, because when you cut sugar out of your diet, if you do have a yeast overgrowth in your GI tract, they will scream at you. They will hijack your nervous system in your gut, and they will make you feel horrible because they're really trying to get you to eat sugar again. Stay the course. My doctor said that chronic sleep loss injures neurons. Is the injury reversible? Yeah, depending on how long you're abusing yourself with chronic sleep loss. So when I say I'm abusing yourself, I don't mean that you're purposefully doing that. I just mean that not getting sleep is a form of abuse to the body. So, any damage is reversible, minus severe traumatic damage typically. So even like the question that was asked earlier, smoking cigarettes for 30 years, is it too late? It's never too late for your body to be able to heal and repair once you remove the problem. So figure out the sleep deprivation issue, and yes, you can reverse the damage. Are chia and flax seeds gluten-free? Yes, Dina, they are. Let's see, Jean says, my doctor recommended a detox cleanse with some charcoal, and I told her I wanted to use your mycobinder. Is there anything else I can do? So if you're using our mycobinder, 6 of those capsules a day is a good place to start. 2-3 times a day. Take that on an empty stomach, ideally, and take that away from other supplements or other medications, because charcoal and zeolite binders can interfere with those things if you take them simultaneously. Other things that you can do if you're trying to do a detox, you can do a vitamin C cleanse, a vitamin C flush, one of my favorite ways to do a detox. You can also incorporate our Ultra Liver Detox, which you would take about 4 capsules a day, 2 capsules twice a day, while you're doing that. And that's just going to support your liver's ability at phase 1 and phase 2 detoxification. Is it true that eating seeds from fruits like apples, lemon, and cherry is bad for you? Yeah, they contain poisons. They contain natural poisons, Bernice, so I don't recommend eating those at all. Okay, so thank you, learning a lot. I'm gluten-free and stopped with all grains 2 months ago, but since have been constipated even though I eat organic, lots of vegetables, legumes, water. So why is that? There's a lot of reasons why you can be constipated. If you started to become constipated as a result of going grain-free, it is a very good possibility that your body does better with more fiber. Some people do and some people don't. Everyone's different in that way, so you might consider a consumption of fiber, but you might also consider that you're not getting enough micronutrients with that diet change. What we see happen a lot when people go grain-free is initially, especially, their diets are more restricted and limited because they've removed so many of the things they were eating before, and so they start developing nutritional deficiencies around certain nutrients that help with gut motility. And so you might consider as well magnesium as a supplement. You might consider vitamin C as a supplement and B vitamins as a supplement to aid with that. You also might want to consider getting some testing done to see a little bit more about why your gut motility is problematic. Now, I did a whole crash course on constipation where we went super deep into a lot of other reasons. And so I'd also encourage you to watch that, and we'll put a link in the feed up for you so you can check that out later. My husband has bad tartar buildup in his teeth despite keeping a diligent oral hygiene routine. What could be the cause? I insisted he stop the mouthwash. Yeah, that's good. Mouthwash could be the reason why. Mouthwash pretty much decimates your microbiome in your mouth. And, of course, that can lead to tartar buildup because of bacterial changes. The other issue would be, what's his diet like? I mean, if he's doing a lot of brushing and flossing, that's great. You can also use a water pick if he's not doing that already. But at the end of the day, tartar buildup like that is generally, it's a dietary issue. So I don't know how much sugar he's eating, whether, or how many excessive carbohydrates. We even see healthier sugars, like people over consuming things like dried fruit can increase tartar buildup on the teeth. So look at those and investigate his diet a little bit more closely as a trigger as well. I've done your diet for 10 months. When's it safe to try to introduce legumes and dairy, and how to do it? So it's safe now if you're feeling better. If you're not feeling better, I would be cautious about reintroducing legumes and dairy. But if you're feeling really good on the diet, I would start with the introduction of some small amounts of legumes first. Typically, legumes best tolerated would be things like lentils. And make sure, if you're going to do that, then small amounts. Give yourself a good solid week of experimenting before you just make the assumption that they're safe. But also, when you're preparing them, make sure you cook them. One of the best ways to prepare, any kind of legume is pressure cooking them, or sprouting and soaking them first and sprouting them. What this does is it gets rid of a lot of the lectins and other chemical products that can be disruptive of your digestion. So using kind of what we call them the traditional preparation methods for legumes would be important. As far as dairy, if you're trying to introduce dairy, I don't recommend you try to introduce them at the same time, but I would only use A2 dairy as an introduction. And I would start with very small amounts and work your way up. Give your body time to give you signs and symptoms of issues that might creep in. I have Hashimoto. I have a lot of trouble sleeping, both falling asleep and staying asleep. I'm a shift worker, so my sleeping schedule varies. Yeah, I mean, that's a big one when you're a shift worker. But anytime I see somebody that has Hashimoto's and they're having struggles with sleep, my first instinctual thought, Colleen, is that you're being over-medicated. So get with your prescribing doctor. Ask them to check your levels. Again, you're looking at your TSH. If it's below 0.5, you're probably being over-medicated. If your T3 and T4 are too high, you're probably being over-medicated, and get those things looked at. You might also talk to your doctor about trying a trial of dose reduction, because sometimes your lab tests can be normal, but the medicine's still causing the problem. And so asking your doctor to help you with like a 10% dose reduction temporarily to see if that improves your ability to sleep might also be very helpful. I mean, you can also watch our show on sleep. We did a whole show on sleep and what you need to do to try to improve it. And so there's a lot more in that show, Colleen, that you could tap into. Does soaking and sprouting seeds reduce their anti-nutrients? It can. It absolutely can. Is there a gluten and grain-free parasite cleanse that you recommend? Yeah, I like to start with a vitamin C flush, and then I like to follow that up with I use a formulation. We have a formulation called Intestinal Defense, and so you would take 4 of those for a couple of weeks to help get your microbiome balanced. Grace Cook, where do I go to buy your book? I find it interesting that while I went gluten-free several years ago, some of the products I use may still be gluten-free. So Patrick, to buy my book, you can go to Amazon. If you use our products, again, this week you can get the book free on any purchase $100 or more. But you can go to Amazon, you can go to Barnes & Noble or any other major book retailer. Walmart, I think, sells it. Target sells it. So any of those book retailers. After years of enjoying apple fritters and homemade bread, I read No Grain, No Pain and started seriously adhering to it, wondering if the villi in the gut can repair from so much damage. Yes, absolutely, Richard. Is there any real science behind high vibrational foods, or is it just metaphysical woo-woo? Now, I think the metaphysical has scientific merit, and we can look at the work of Bruce Lipton and understand that all physical aspects of our world are built on sound and light. So if you want to talk about those, have frequencies, vibrational frequencies. I don't think vibrations are woo-woo. I think that the way some people present the information, it feels a little woo-woo, or there's a lack of scientific knowledge around how to describe it in a manner that's consistent with understanding the science behind it. But I definitely don't think that vibration, light, and sound are woo-woo topics or metaphysical only topics. That being said, I don't when you start getting into like, okay, what are high vibrational foods? I know some people out there that are talking about like meat being not a high vibrational food, and only certain plants are high vibrational foods. And those people, I would say, are mispresenting the information to you. So, I'm not a fan of pure veganism. I know there are some people that do better on a higher plant-based diets than higher meat-based diets, but there's also the opposite end of that spectrum. But anyway, I don't think it's woo-woo, if that answers your question. I just don't think we have a good way to fully understand it and explain it in a way that it doesn't sound woo-woo. Started gluten-free and low oxalate diet from 3 weeks for rheumatoid arthritis. First week, symptom and inflammation reduced, but from the second week, symptoms slowly reoccurred, and now I'm in the third week in severe back pain. You're in mold, most likely, Neha. When we see people do really well and then backlash, and this is especially true if you're following a low oxalate diet and you went gluten-free, grain-free. Specifically, though, I would say if you're not grain-free, go grain-free, because that may also be part of it, but it's also possible you're in mold. My chronically inflamed tonsils are back to normal size and color. Thank you to the no grain, no pain diet. Also, my hemorrhoids have disappeared completely. Awesome. Thank you for sharing. Can I eat water chestnut flour on a low oxalate diet? I'd have to look that up. I'm not, at the top of my head, I can't say for 100% certainty whether or not chestnut flour has high oxalate. I don't know that anybody's really ever studied it, to be honest with you. I suggest to, let's see. Holly says, thanks, Dr. O. Bought your book, Follow the No Grain, No Pain Diet, Improvement in All Markers, but I still wrestle with arrhythmias, and I'm looking for a masterclass from you on SVTPA, CPVCs. I don't know if you've considered, Holly, looking at your electrolytes, potentially even supplementing more with electrolyte. We see that a lot when people start adding electrolyte and salt. And I don't mean like table salt, the processed chemically washed salt, as much as I mean like a Himalayan pink salt. That they actually see a lot of times their arrhythmias go away. I've also seen cases where low oxalate diet or oxalate reduced diet, beyond the no grain, no pain diet, can dramatically improve PVCs and other arrhythmias. Supplementation to consider would be possibly magnesium, probably one of the most effective and well-researched reasons why arrhythmias can happen. So you might look at those three things as well. Doc, as a result of my recent blood work, my doctor has me on a slew of meds. I think I'm being led to your training and your instructions. Get on it, Michael. I wish you all the best. My philosophy is pretty simple. Medicines don't lead to resolution of problems. They cover symptoms. And if you're in if you're of the opinion and you just want your symptoms to go away and you don't want to make any diet or lifestyle changes because it just sounds too hard, then medicine's a great fit for you. But if you're really trying to figure out why your body's breaking down, you know, just know that medicine's not going to fix that. Best way to heal a bleeding stomach ulcer: recently prescribed omeprazole to reduce acid in the stomach. Well, if you have a confirmed bleeding stomach ulcer, you know, the issue with stomach ulcers is that once you have the ulcer, the act of eating becomes the irritant. So like the act of surviving, right? Because you need food to survive. And so anytime you eat, you're going to cause an irritation to an area that's already irritated. It would be very similar. An ulcer is a lot like, imagine you had a big burn on your arm, and every time you put clothes on and touch that area of your arm, it would just irritate that skin that was damaged. And so this is one of those cases where, you know, your doctor's got you on omeprazole to reduce stomach acid. You know, talk to your doctor about, you know, how long does he want you to be on that for that ulcer to heal? Was that ulcer caused by stomach acid? Because that really, the fundamental question is, you can stay on omeprazole and it probably will help, but if you don't know why the ulcer occurred in the first place, then omeprazole is only really going to work until you quit taking it. So why do you have an ulcer? Gluten can cause ulcers. A bacteria called H. pylori, Helicobacter pylori, can also cause stomach ulcers. Candida overgrowth can cause ulceration in the stomach. Other food allergens and food sensitivities can contribute to ulcers. So have you done a deeper dive and investigation as to why the ulcer exists in the first place? That's where you have to start, because no amount of any kind of, like I said earlier, no amount of any kind of medication is going to fix the underlying why. I'm from Holland. Is it possible to buy your products and ship them? It's possible. If you want to reach out to my office, can we put the number in for them? You can reach out to my office and talk to them about that. I don't want to guarantee anything for you, but you certainly can ask, and there may be different, again, the biggest issue we have with shipping overseas is different countries have different rules around what they let in or let out, and sometimes the cost of certain things is prohibitive because of the taxes as things are being imported. Having trouble staying asleep through the night, waken many times. I'm gluten-free and take nutritional supplements. Any ideas on what could be causing this? Elizabeth, watch our class on sleep. We put a link already up to that class. Something else I'll just say about that: if you're having trouble staying asleep throughout the night, and you're a woman, and I don't say this to sound sexist, but a lot of times women that have trouble staying asleep through the night, it's because their minds are processing something important in their life. And so ask yourself the question, what is your mind maybe trying to process for you subconsciously that could be triggering a sympathetic nervous system response that's allowing or causing you to wake up more frequently? And if that's the case, you know, dwell on that a little bit more and resolve it. And again, maybe that's not your case at all. Maybe it's something completely different. But I see that an awful lot, because the brain, a woman's brain is super powerful, and it will process. You know, compared to a man will go to sleep and sleep through every stress and every storm in the world. But a woman, you know, the smallest amount of stress, and she'll be up all night trying to process and resolve that in her own mind. So you gotta sometimes figure out what that is. Now, it could also be a number of other things, but if you watch that master class, you'll get a whole lot of other tips on how to improve your sleep. True cause of Raynaud's syndrome, you know, it's an autoimmune condition. So going back to what are the triggers? Food, chemicals, microbes, and micronutrient deficiencies. Those four categorical triggers are the biggest triggers for autoimmunity, including Raynaud's. Grass-fed sheep milk is better than cow milk. I think it's different for different people. I wouldn't say it's necessarily better. Sheep milk is A2 by default. Cow's milk is not. So in that regard, yes. But if you're drinking A2 cow's milk, it's not necessarily better. Although I'm not a big fan of dairy as a staple food in your diet. So I mean, if you're using dairy as a way to get the bulk of your calories, that remember why do animals produce dairy? They produce dairy to feed babies, and adult humans aren't babies, right? And so there's a lot of hormones and other chemicals that are designed to aid in the growth of babies that are in that milk. So, that just from that perspective, I would say if you're having it, fine, but again, as a staple, I would be real cautious about that. Most stable fat to cook with, there's several. Coconut oil, really, honestly, probably the most stable fat to cook with is animal lard, animal fat, so good grass-fed beef fat. If you want like a plant-based option, coconut oil, organic palm oil, avocado oil are all good, pretty good heat-stable fats that are plant-based. Magnesium's not helping nocturnal leg cramps. Combine it with combine the magnesium with calcium, Robert. Most of the time, night cramping is not a magnesium issue so much as it's a calcium issue. So taking calcium and magnesium together and see if that helps, and come back in a week and let me know. Can you explain the application and usage of GI Soothe? Yeah, so GI Soothe is a mucilaginous product. It contains a number of different compounds that help produce a mucilaginous layer. So its design is to coat the stomach and the intestines. And why would we want to do something like that? Well, if you have irritation, if you have gastric reflux, or you have some other type of persistent inflammation that's been happening in your GI tract, GI Soothe won't fix the inflammation, but it will give you a buffer as you're changing your diet and lifestyle and trying to fix that inflammation by not subjecting yourself to things that would drive it. So it's a buffer more than anything else. It's a buffer for people who are trying to soothe their GI tract from those types of symptoms, but it's not a long-term solution. 51-year-old male suffering from immune-mediated neuropathy, polyneuropathy, tibial mononeuropathy. Can this be B12 deficiency? Numbness in both feet? What would you? Yeah, it can be, Angela. It could absolutely be a vitamin B12 deficiency. It could be a vitamin B1 deficiency. It could be a vitamin B5 deficiency. It could be a folate deficiency. A lot of things can cause neuropathy. What I would suggest is get his levels tested, his nutrient levels tested as a first step in understanding whether or not that's what's driving it. And you should also understand that gluten is a primary driver of neuropathy. There's a great body of evidence, medical evidence and research it's out of Oxford in the UK on gluten as a neurotoxin driving neuropathy and neuropathological diseases. So the other thing I would encourage is a grain-free, gluten-free, no grain, no pain diet. Is L-glutamine safe to use regularly, or it's only for recovery and for temporary use? Yeah, I mean, bodybuilders have been using L-glutamine on a regular basis to recover from workouts for decades. Safe amounts, it's different for different people. I'd say L-glutamine up to 5 grams, 5,000 milligrams a day if you're trying to recover from workouts, or if you have post-surgically, or if you've had severe trauma. L-glutamine is fantastic in supporting that recovery. Now, if you're taking it for something like leaky gut and you're trying to support your intestinal lining and GI tract, 1,500 to 2,000 milligrams a day for most people is a pretty reasonable amount to use. But some people do get headaches with L-glutamine. And so I would always say start lower and work your way up, so that if you are one of those that get headaches, if you start out at 500 milligrams and work your way up slowly, it's better for you to kind of be aware and just pay attention if you are one of those, because I've actually seen where people took too much too quickly. And I saw a case one time where a guy went to the ER because he got such a severe headache. So just start small and titrate up. Question on yeast. If you're talking about food-derived yeast, we have an article on that, Cynthia. I'll put a link up for you. I'm not a big fan of nutritional yeast as a supplement. And this article will take you through the deep dive on that. Do you have any experience in healing tendons using high doses of collagen? And if yes, what dose and what type? Yes. Collagen as a support element to repair tendons is very important. The ultra collagen that we have at Gluten-Free Society is the one I use, but the dosing is anywhere from 10 to 20 grams of collagen protein a day. You got to be careful. Some people have tender stomachs when it comes to collagen, so sometimes getting above 10 grams, some people notice they get more gas, bloating, intestinal discomfort, and even constipation. So if you're one of those, keep it, to that 10 gram a day type of dose. But there's a lot of other things that can go into helping with tendon repair as well. And so I would encourage you to look into infrared therapies and red light therapies. I'd also encourage you to look into get with probably a good chiropractor, and look into ultrasound and laser therapies and cryotherapies. Those can all be done and have really great research track records for helping with repair. I'm not able to digest omega-3 and not keen on fish. Which other way can I obtain omega-3 in my diet? Grass-fed beef fat. Grass-fed, grass-finished has omega-3 in it as well. So that would be another way to do it if you tolerate that, Cam. I've always found that with the omega-3 supplement products, a lot of people tell me they can't digest them, and then when I give them Omega Max, they're fine. A lot of those products on the market are rancid, so if you're getting a bad product, it won't digest well and it'll cause stomach upset. And so you may have just been getting a rancid product as well. So there's that to consider. What are usual causes of MS if you mean multiple sclerosis? Lots. Vitamin D deficiency, vitamin B12 deficiency, gluten exposure, chemical exposures, pesticide exposures, heavy metal toxicity. Again, going back to MS is an autoimmune disease. So this is true of all autoimmune disease. There are 4 categorical biochemical triggers of autoimmunity: food, chemical exposures, microbial imbalances, and micronutrient deficiencies. So if you are an autoimmune struggler, if you're struggling with autoimmune disease, those 4 categories can be measured. They can be tested for. Ask your doctor to test you for those things. I learned this when I was an intern in the VA hospital in rheumatology. They gave me a thick, many of you may know this story, but they gave me a thick book and said, it was on Friday, they said, don't come back until you've read this book. I'm like, it's Friday. So that means I got to go home and read a book that thick over the weekend and ignore my family. So what did I do? I went home and read it. And when I came back into the hospital, I just observed. I watched the doctor, my attending physician, I watched him just basically treat patients, and I was an observer with several other medical interns. And after a couple of weeks, I said, why did you make me read the book? And he said, what do you mean? I said, because you're not applying what's in the book. The book actually was very clear, and this was a book, it was called The Primer on Rheumatological Disease. It was written by several experts. I can't take credit for discovering this information, but I learned it in this internship, and that was autoimmune disease has triggers, and those 4 categories are the summary of what that book actually taught me. And what I realized in the VA hospital very early on was that the doctors were not testing objectively for these triggers. They were just treating the symptoms of the autoimmune disease. So you could imagine as a young intern, I got really frustrated really fast because, why read the book that says these are the triggers when you're not even willing to measure the triggers and understand why the disease exists? Because the drugs to treat autoimmune disease are dangerous, in my opinion. Methotrexate increases the risk of cancer. Methotrexate also causes folate deficiency and destroys the gut lining, so it causes malnutrition over time. That's one of the primary disease-modifying anti-rheumatic drugs. And you also have other drugs today that are being used, like the biologics, and the biologics are all linked to cancer. So you're trading an autoimmune disease for the potential risk of the development of cancer, and that just doesn't seem like a fair trade for any person to have to suffer and go through when there are known triggers to autoimmune disease that can be measured. So those of you if you're hearing this for the first time and that's a new concept to you, watch my crash course. It's a 3-part crash course on autoimmunity, and go into the depths and the details of all the triggers and the nuance on the development of autoimmunity. So if you haven't watched that autoimmune crash course, I'd highly encourage you to go check that video out. How deficient is our food in terms of boron? It depends on where you live. Some areas, some regions of the world, like the Caribbean, have virtually no boron. And places like Turkey have the richest amount of boron you could imagine. So, and then there's everything in between. So it depends on where you live, and it depends on where the food you're eating comes from and where it was grown. What's the best sleeping position? The one that gives you the most sleep. This is one of those, it's unique to the person. And we could argue the pros and cons of how to sleep. I would say not a great sleeping position is on your stomach with your neck torqued for 8 hours at night. But if you are comfortable sleeping on your back or sleeping on your side, either one of those is perfectly fine. I'm from South Africa and don't have access to your vitamin C for the flush. What could I use instead? You can find, if you can find a good vitamin C ascorbic acid powder that's pure, that's not derived from corn, you know, at your local market, that could also be used. But you want to use a powdered version of the stuff, because if you try to do a flush with pills, you're not going to have a good experience. Have you often, Allison's asking, have you often seen red bumps itching from gluten and grains, like pruritus maybe? You already answered, I just joined. Yeah, all the time. Can gluten cause skin bumps? We have a whole video, I think, on the manifestations of gluten inflammation on the skin that you might want to check out. I have a family member who's suffering after having his gallbladder removed about a month ago. He appears to be declining with cognitive impairment and needs help. I don't know how I could give you an answer to that, Melissa. That's terrible, first of all. My prayers are with you. You got to get him professional help. You know, find a good functional practitioner if he's willing to go that route. But that's what I would recommend that you do, because if he's declining on a rapid pace, that's not good. And, you know, no small advice I could give here would probably have a tremendous impact. I mean, outside of going no grain, no pain. But, you know, I've also seen where people, when they have family members who are suffering, you know, I've even gone through this, where you can't control what another adult does with their diet and lifestyle. And if they're not willing to make the change, even though you know it's the right change for them to make, you know, all you can do is love them and, unfortunately, watch them suffer if they're not willing to make changes. And I don't know where you're at in that regard, but I hope that's not the case. But I would, you know, again, I'd try to get them to follow up with a functional doc. Yeah, so Mystic Kitty, I like that call sign, Mystic Kitty. Do you have a video or deep dive on the relationship between iron and ferritin? My friend has low iron and high ferritin. Yeah, your friend is probably got some variety of liver damage or some type of systemic inflammation. When ferritin is high, I'm sorry, I said that wrong. When inflammation in the body is high, ferritin goes up. Ferritin is actually a marker where we measure it to determine whether or not a person is chronically inflamed. And when a person is chronically inflamed, guess what goes down? Iron. So you can have low iron, high ferritin, and it's kind of paradoxical, but not really. Low iron, your iron is being burned up as a result of the chronic inflammation. So then the question becomes, well, why is the inflammation there? So what's driving the ferritin up? You know, a number of different things could do it. I've seen alcoholics have high ferritin. I've seen people with gluten sensitivity have high ferritin. I've seen people with other food sensitivities have high ferritin. I've seen people in mold. Mold is a really common cause of high ferritin, environmental mold exposure, and even things like mold growth internally, so like candida overgrowth can also do it. So that's a good place for you to start. Have I ever seen a gluten sensitivity test come back negative? Yes, I have, several. In your experience, is flaxseed regular consumption lowers testosterone? Does regular consumption of flaxseed lower testosterone? I think we can make an argument for some of the estrogen-based lignans in flax contributing to disruption and hormone perception by the body. I've never seen a direct correlation where flax directly causes testosterone depletion. I don't know if that's what you're asking. So there's an indirect impact, but there's not a direct one in my experience. The nutritional testing was money well spent. I learned a lot and am moving forward correcting deficiencies. I'm glad. Thank you. Maybe consider going and leaving us a review as well. Can I use Zeolite for heavy metal toxicity? You can. It may, depending on which heavy metal you have, it might be a good choice. It certainly can be used. Just got to be careful with long-term use of zeolite if you're not also getting other minerals in your diet, because zeolite doesn't just bind heavy metal, it can bind other healthy minerals. And so what happens to a lot of people when they get on these binders for really long periods of time, if they're not supplementing minerals concomitantly, then they can end up with mineral deficiencies. Diagnosed with POI, a medical acronym. I'm not, spell it out for me and I can maybe give you a better answer. Either that or it's a misspell or a typo. Is there any way to test organic food for its purity, meaning it's truly organic, at least pesticides and are heavy metals free? Not commercially to average citizens, no, there's not. Can we use wheat and oat bran after washing them to remove gluten? I don't recommend it. Every time I take vitamin C, which I take after eating a meal, no matter what form, it upsets my stomach. Well, if that's the case, quit taking it. You know, you may not, it may not be the right thing for you, Judy. Everybody's different, and I think it's important that you all understand that I can stand here and answer a lot of questions generally, but what I can't do is give you the exact specific reason for why something's happening to you. And so always remember that your body is right. Listen to your body. I am now 8 months on no grains. My vitamin B3 is very low. That's not a question. That's a statement, Barbara. So if you're asking whether or not a no-grain diet causes vitamin B3 deficiency, the answer is no, not really. But you may not be eating enough foods that are high enough in vitamin B3. So again, I don't know what your question is, but you might want to consider checking out our crash course on vitamin B3. It lists out a lot of foods that are high in B3 for you to consume on a grain-free diet. So part of all of our crash courses, again, for those of you that don't know, all of our crash courses on nutrients come with dietary recommendations for those nutrients that are grain-free recommendations in nature. I can't sustain the diet because of gluten addiction. What can help with that? High doses of niacin and vitamin C can help with that. If there's a protein that when your body is breaking gluten down, it's called exorphin. Some call it gluteomorphin, but it mimics morphine. And so some people with excessive gluten exorphin in their system have extreme addiction to wheat and other gluten-based grains, and so they have a harder time kicking it. So using niacin and vitamin C can help with that as you're trying to transition your diet. How to stop my UC flares? Well, if you're having ulcerative colitis flares, you need to figure out why. It's an autoimmune disease. The two most common things that trigger flares of the gut, inflammatory autoimmune flares in the gut, are the wrong food or chemicals in your food that you're eating and being exposed to, processed foods specifically, and microbial imbalances. So ask your doctor to help you measure those things. Proper way to take slippery elm? There's not a proper way except for just on an empty stomach. Because you're using it as a mucilaginous to try to coat your stomach. I've been struggling with very low appetite for years now. I can't eat enough food to sustain my nutritional needs. I have a lot of tension in my body. I'm 41 and had bulimia in the past. Yeah, you've got to slowly increase your calorie load. If you're having a hard time because your appetite is low. Part of expanding your appetite is to try to slowly, increase your quantity of calories by about 100 calories for a few days, and then go another 100 for another few days, and just slowly implement and increase it. Because as you eat more volume, slowly you'll increase the expansion or the stretching of your stomach. When you've had a history of bulimia, most likely your stomach has shrunk. Stomachs are adaptable, right? So they can shrink or they can grow based on the quantity of food that you're eating. And if your stomach is really small, it can fill up very, very quickly, thus shutting off your desire to want to eat more. So slowly increasing your calories over time is a smart way to go about doing that. The other thing, if you're not able to eat a lot of calories, is get a good solid multivitamin. That way you're supplementing your diet to meet some of your nutritional needs that you're not meeting currently as far as your calories are concerned. Catherine says, I remember you saying to stay away from too many almonds, but can't remember what the reason is. Several reasons, but probably one of the biggest ones, if you overconsume almonds, is if you have a problem with oxalate. Almonds are high in oxalate, and a lot of people struggle with too much oxalate, and oxalates can contribute to things like joint pain and arthritis and kidney stones and headaches and a vast array of inflammatory problems. So you just have to be careful. Don't make them a staple food in your diet. Recommended butter alternatives? Yeah, lard, fat, animal fat. You could do coconut butter as well if you like the taste of coconut, or you could do other types of oils, avocado oil, olive oil, etc. So Debbie says, I just turned 56 and was wondering what your thoughts regarding hormone therapy. I'm not opposed to hormone therapy if you're talking about like biological or bioidentical estrogen, progesterone, testosterone supplementation in women, menopausally speaking, but I'm not a fan of doing it just to do it. Menopause is a normal process of life, and far be it for me to judge any of you who feel like taking those hormones improve the quality of your life. If that's the way you feel, then by all means, do what you feel like is the best thing for you to do. But there's also a reason why we go through changes in life. There's a reason why we downregulate those hormones post-menopausally. And I believe in listening to the wisdom of the body and not necessarily supplementing over it just for the sake of the fact that you're going through that change. So that's the kind of the short answer, Debbie. We've done a big show on hormones that you might want to check out as well. I mean, there are some risks associated with hormone therapies. Particularly, one of the biggest risks are B vitamin deficiencies and magnesium and zinc deficiencies being triggered by estrogen replacement therapies. So if you're not aware of those things and you're on hormone replacement, you might want to consider supplementation of those nutrients, or at the very least monitoring of those nutrients to make sure you're not becoming deficient. Yeah, so question on AFib seems to be epidemic. Have you seen patients whose AFib is triggered by EMF or radio frequency? Yes. Yeah, it absolutely can be. I had an episode of that one time, and didn't realize my phone was in a roam mode, and I was driving through the mountains of Colorado where there were no towers, and my phone started to roam, and so it was really pinging, and the EMF in it went off the chart, and my heart just really started to rapidly beat, and it freaked me out. So I ended up having to turn my phone off. I figured it out, and I turned my phone off, and it went away. But no doubt about it, frequencies, electromagnetic and radio frequencies can definitely, these are energetic frequencies, and your heart is nerve tissue. It's the third largest nervous system in your body. It's your heart. So it can definitely be impacted. What do we suggest for yeast overgrowth? If you're trying to rebalance or just kind of balance your microbiome, check out our bundle. We have a yeast bundle, don't we, Mel? Mm-hmm. Yeah, check that yeast bundle out. There's several things in it, but caprylic acid and Aspartate are two of the big ingredients that are in it that are very helpful in that regard to rebalance your microbiome. So Heidi's asking, what's A2 dairy? If you don't know what A2 dairy is, simply put, it's a type of dairy. A2 represents the marker for casein. Casein is the protein in dairy. And so there's A1 protein casein and there's A2 casein. A1 casein has been linked to autoimmunity and inflammation. A2 has not. So it's important that if you're going to use dairy at all, which I don't recommend if you're following No Grain, No Pain and you're going through our protocol, but later down the road, like we were talking about earlier, if you want to reintroduce dairy, there's that potential. But the biggest difference is the casein molecule. Now, we've done several shows on dairy, the dangers of the dairy for the gluten-sensitive individual, Heidi, and you might want to check out some of those longer, more in-depth dairy videos. I suspect a B12 deficiency. How much should be supplemented? You can start with anything between 1,000 and 10,000 micrograms. Ideally, methylcobalamin would be the preferred form of vitamin B12 to supplement with. Melissa, we have a methylcobalamin lozenge. It comes in 5,000 microgram lozenges, and those are designed to absorb through the cheeks. So if a person has absorption problems like a gallbladder issue, or a lack of gallbladder or liver damage or stomach damage where they're not absorbing properly, you suck that lozenge in the mouth and it absorbs, the B12 absorbs through the cheeks. Diagnosed with premature ovarian insufficiency or failure, do you think, okay, I see that was the acronym you used earlier. So do you think this can be corrected with a gluten-free diet? I've seen it be corrected with a gluten-free diet. As a matter of fact, somebody sent me a picture just the other day of their new baby, and I never met this person. They never came to my clinic or anything, but she sent it to me through Facebook and said, I just want to say thank you. We have a new baby, and it's because of the No Grain, No Pain diet and your videos. And I thought that was really awesome. Anyway, premature ovarian failure, it can definitely be as a result of gluten exposure, as can infertility, unexplainable infertility, or misdiagnosed infertility issues. A lot of it has to do, or can have to do, with gluten. Gluten causes something called polyendocrine syndrome, which is just basically, it's a simple way of putting that is it destroys your body's ability to properly produce the hormones that maintain good functionality, and that includes the hormones from the ovaries and the uterus. It also includes the hormones from the brain, the pituitary, etc. Ringing in the ears, I mean, there's a lot that can be done. B12 deficiencies, a lot of times, one of the things that is linked to tinnitus or ear ringing. So you might try seeing if that's helpful for you. How to deal with a UTI without an antibiotic. I recently had colon cancer surgery, afraid to use the antibiotic. Well, I mean, you really need to work with your doctor on this, but there are certain things that you can do to support your urinary tract for sure. D-mannose is one of them. We actually have a product called UTI Relief, and we have another product called UT Shield, Deanna, that, again, I don't recommend if you have a raging infection that you're trying to treat your infection with these things without, medical observation or guidance, but those are definitely things you can use to support your UT tract, your urinary tract. Have you seen people who are reporting pain in the stomach area, but they have negative testing for H. pylori using a breath test? Yes, and sometimes it's better to do like a culture of the stomach in order to assess, or not a culture of the stomach, a culture of the stool to assess for H. pylori. You can also ask your GI doctor to, they can do scopes where they can take biopsies. And what they can sometimes see under the biopsy is damage that looks like H. pylori damage, and sometimes that's the way the diagnosis is also given, Jan. How does the body fight off gluten until age 60 and then it fails to do so? Chris, you might want to check out our video on gluten accelerants, gluten accelerators. We did a show on that where we talked about all the different reasons why people start reacting to gluten aggressively, where they've had a history of being able to tolerate gluten. So that would be a good place for you to start. Maybe we can put a link up for for that video for you. Okay, man, we went over time again. Look, thanks for joining me today. We'll be back again next Tuesday for a live 6 p.m. show, crash course, if you will, and we'll be back again next Thursday. This was because of the holidays, I came in on Friday today, but we're usually here for live Q&A every Thursday at 12:30 p.m. Central Standard Time, and we'll be back next week at that same time. So if you didn't get your question answered today, join us again next week. And don't forget, come support us over at Gluten-Free Society. If you're new and you want to learn more about how to navigate autoimmunity and how to approach the gluten-free diet in the right way, come to Gluten-Free Society and subscribe there to our newsletter and support us over there. We have 11 people behind this camera that are working to make this happen for you guys to get this educational information every week. So if you want to support us, you can certainly use products from Gluten-Free Society to do that. You can also support us by thumbs upping, sharing this video, and helping us spread the word. Remember, hashtag save 100 million lives. That's our goal, and that's our mission. So again, thanks for tuning in. We'll see you next week. Have a fantastic weekend.